The world knows Jos Verstappen for what he did to Max. Fewer know that in 1993, every major team in Formula One was chasing him. He made one choice, and the career he should have had began closing down around him. To understand that choice, you have to know what 1993 looked like for him. Jos Verstappen had just won the German Formula 3 championship, and when that season ended, McLaren, Jordan, and Benetton had all been in touch. And in that era, a 21-year-old getting calls from teams of that caliber was not a small thing. He had options no young driver gets twice, and he had one call left to return. McLaren offered a one-off test, with no contract beyond that single day and nothing guaranteed beyond the opportunity to impress. Flavio Briatore, Benetton's team principal, offered something that felt like the opposite. A 2-year contract, test driver in 1994 and race driver in 1995. For a 21-year-old weighing security against uncertainty, the choice was obvious. Jos chose Benetton. In that era, the test driver role also served as the team's reserve. JJ Lehto was the second race driver alongside Schumacher. When Lehto crashed at Silverstone in preseason testing and crushed 2 of his vertebrae, Jos was the natural promotion. However, the B194 was, in Jos's own words, very nervous, difficult to drive, designed for Schumacher's driving style. The qualifying lap between them never closed below a second all season, not because Jos lacked pace, but because he was constantly adapting to a machine that had been built around someone else's instincts. What made the situation worse was something the FIA investigated but could never conclusively prove. Schumacher's car may have had illegal traction control running. Ayrton Senna had suspected it before his death at Imola. Jos drove the same Benetton without those aids. Benetton's willingness to bend the rules didn't stop there. To speed up pit stops, they had stripped out a fuel safety filter from the standard refueling rate, a modification the FIA had not authorized. At Hockenheim, during the German Grand Prix, that decision caught Jos directly. When the system failed during a pit stop, racing fuel poured across the car and caught light, and he was still inside when it ignited. He suffered burns to his face and hands before pulling himself free through the flames. Benetton never publicly acknowledged their responsibility. He came back the following weekend and stood on the podium in Hungary, then did it again at Spa, 2 podiums in the same season where Benetton had nearly killed him. Jos did not continue with Benetton into 1995. The 2-year deal had existed on paper, but Hugh Brodengatter, Jos's manager, pushed Briatore for a higher retainer going into the second year, and Briatore walked away rather than meeting it. Rodengatter's push for more had cost Jos the second year of his own contract. For 1995, Jos moved to Simtech, a small team running on limited funds. It was meant to be a bridge to something better, but Simtech never made it to the summer, folding mid-season and leaving him without a car. What followed were years at teams that were never going to win him anything. In 1998, during one of those lean stretches, came the night in Lanaken, Belgium, a fight at a karting circuit that became a criminal conviction and a headline that followed him in the press for years. Then, in 1999, Jordan had a vacancy. They kept Jos on standby while Damon Hill decided whether to see out the season. Hill stayed, and the door closed. However, Harvey Postlethwaite had not given up on Jos. He had spent years on the top of Formula One as a technical director, one of the most respected designers in the paddock, and he still believed in Jos when most had moved on. By the late 1990s, Postlethwaite was working on something that could change everything, and that was Honda's return to Formula One as a full constructor, not just an engine supplier. He was building the project from scratch, with Jos as his chosen lead driver. For the first time since 1994, the seat on offer had the right conditions, a proper budget, a technical director who understood him, and a project built to make him competitive. On April 15, 1999, Postlethwaite suffered a heart attack during a test session in Barcelona and later died. Honda's project collapsed with him, because there was no one who could hold it together and the momentum was gone. Jos lost his last realistic chance at a competitive car, and this time there was nothing to unpick, no manager to blame and no bad contract to trace, because the man who believed in him had simply run out of time. In 2003 at Minardi, the Brazilian Grand Prix was his 107th and final Formula One start. He retired before halfway. The following year, he came close to returning with Jaguar, a properly backed team, and was considered the frontrunner for the seat until Christine Clean arrived with Red Bull sponsorship money and the calculation changed. 12 months later, that same company bought Jaguar outright and renamed it Red Bull Racing. The investors who had taken Jos's last realistic ride went on to build the dynasty his son would inherit. What Jos did after 2003, he never framed as making up for what he lost. He framed it as a correction. I would have done things differently. And I looked in the mirror and I knew exactly what I did wrong or didn't do right, and I tried to teach Max only the good things. From 2005, with his F1 career behind him, Jos became Max's full-time mechanic, fan driver, engine tuner, and coach. 7 days a week, 8 in the morning until 10 at night. That left Sophie, Max's mother, with a decision she had not planned for. I let Max go because I knew if he wanted to make a career, he would have to go with Jos, she said. That was very emotional for me because you're letting go of your child. The methods were hard. After one bad race, Jos didn't speak to Max for a week. He made changes to the kart without warning, so Max would have to feel the difference and report it himself. If you don't feel anything, don't say anything. Don't lie. It worked. In the season that followed in karting, they won everything. Every race, both European championships, and the world title. Jos had made sure of it. He knew where every mistake had come from. He had lived the cost of the wrong manager, the wrong car, the wrong choice. He did not let Max make the same ones. Max made his F1 debut with Toro Rosso, a team assembled from the remains of Minardi, where Jos had driven his final season. The company that built his championship car is Red Bull, the same company whose sponsorship money once took Jos's place at Jaguar. They bought that team and renamed it, and handed it to the son of the man they had displaced. The designer who built those cars, Adrian Newey, came into Formula One through Harvey Postlethwaite, the man who had meant to give Jos a second chance. Jos had one way of framing what he had built. In 2018, asked whether Max was more talented than he himself had been, Jos said, "I don't know if he is more talented than I was. I find that very difficult to judge, but he did have a much better training. Not a faster driver by default, a better prepared one. Jos had never been able to build that preparation for himself. The wrong car, the wrong team, the wrong timing. He spent 2 decades understanding exactly what had failed and made sure none of it reached Max." Jos said, "I found the time with Max much more fun than my own career. I did more for Max's career than I ever did for my own." When asked whether he still thought about the wins he never had, he said Max won them for him. That's Grand Prix Untold. We cover the untold stories of Formula One. Subscribe and we'll see you at the next one.